Welcome everyone to our Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 regular closed session meeting of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors. In accordance with Government Code 54953E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. Director Coleman is participating remotely. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
I'm here.
President Lenny.
Here. All right, if members of the public are online and wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Are there any speakers for public comment?
I have one hand for public comment.
All right, for online speakers, when prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we will have you contact staff. Secretary will call each speaker in the order received. You'll be allotted 3 minutes to speak. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time is concluded.
Okay. First, we have Yvette Rivera. Yvette, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. I really wanted just to recap what I said this morning to the HR Ledge committee members, but I'm not going to have time because I see the Shantae Scott versus East Bay MUD civil rights lawsuit is on your closed board agenda today. I want to say 3 things about that. 1, there is currently a jury trial date set for that civil rights lawsuit. Currently, it's set for November the 14th, 2022. Given that East Bay MUD gave a public statement about the reasons for terminating Ms. Scott and how confident they were about going to trial and prevailing. I'm looking forward to that trial, and it's going to happen in our back door right here in Oakland. So again, November 14th, if that date changes, I will update it at a public meeting. Number 2, I submitted a Public Records Act request to find out who provided that statement to ABC News and everyone that was included in that email string. I hope I receive a copy of that email string within 10 days. Just to remind the Board of Directors of that statement, I'm going to end by reading it, and then I'll yield. On June 10th, 2022, ABC Melanie Woodrow article claims that East Bay MUD provided the following emailed statement. Quote, Ms. Scott's claims not only lack merit, but also omit critical facts regarding her job performance and termination. In fact, Ms. Scott contradicted many of her claims under oath in sworn testimony. We detailed the serious factual flaws in Ms. Scott's claims, complaint, and the reasons for her termination in our motion for summary judgment in response to her complaint, the result of 2 years of fact-finding and numerous sworn statements from primary parties, including Ms. Scott herself. We are confident we will prevail in this case. End quote. For that reason, I'm looking forward to seeing that trial in person. Again, I'm glad it's going to happen in a few weeks, and that's all I have. I yield.
All right, do we have any other speakers?
We do. Next, we have George Cleveland. George, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you, Risha, and good morning to General Manager Chan, members of the board, and all others who are attending this meeting, whether virtually or in person. My name is George Cleveland. I'm speaking on as a, well, I guess as a human being here, not necessarily an employee or a union here. Today is the 35th anniversary of the National March on Washington for Lesbian, Gay, and Rights. Now you say, okay, that's cool. As a result of that, a couple of people decided that it would be really good to develop something, a mechanism for LGBTQIA plus folks to come out, as it were. And they developed its National Coming Out Day. And it turns out that they decided to do it 1 year later, October 11th, 1988. So today is the 34th anniversary of that. It's going on today. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands of people across the country making that challenging decision to let people know who they really are. and it is a challenging thing. I know this from personal experience. It's not an easy thing to do, but I just wanted to bring it up because, East Bay Management has been very progressive, accepting, and promoting our affinity group, Reigning Pride. And I don't know if it's possible that East Bay Mud could come up with something official to note this day, because it's not on the agenda for either this or the open session later this afternoon. But I just wanted to bring that up because you have a noticeable community at East Bay Mud, including members of our board of directors and down the line to rank and file like myself. And it's important, and I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention, and hopefully they can recognize it at this afternoon's open session. And if not, maybe perhaps it could be on the agenda and it could be retroactively recognized at the next board meeting. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, George.
We have no other hands for public comment?
All right, at this time then, we will convene to discuss closed session agenda items, return to our regular meeting at 1:15. Okay, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 regular business meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. In accordance with Government Code Section 54953, subsection E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. We will receive reports from the October 7th Upper McCollum River Watershed Authority meeting and this morning's Legislative Human Resources Committee meeting under item 11. Director Coleman will be participating remotely. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman?
Present.
Director Katz?
Present.
Director McIntosh? Here. Director Mellon?
Present.
Director Patterson?
Present.
Director Young?
Here.
President Lenny?
Here. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to start today with a presentation, or a couple presentations.
Yes, thank
Clifford,
you.
would you lead us in those?
Thank you, President Lenny. So each year, the San Francisco section of the American Society of Civil Engineers presents project and individual awards. At this year's annual meeting and awards dinner ceremony held on September 28th, Engineering Manager Elizabeth Bialik received the award for Outstanding Civil Engineer in the Public Sector. The award is given to professional engineers employed by a public organization on the basis of outstanding engineering achievement in the public sector for professional activities, advancement of engineering leadership education, and ASCE involvement. ASCE's recognition noted that Elizabeth embodies ASCE's mission of advancing and amplifying the voice of the civil engineering profession. Through her work at East Bay Mud and professional activities on ASCE's Region 9 Water and Environment Committee and Committee on Developing Leaders, she has advocated for water and wastewater policy at the state level and contributed to the mission of dutifully managing natural resources and protecting the environment for future generations. As a leader in ASCE, she continues to advocate for progress in engineering leadership, engineering advocacy in public policy on water and environmental issues, and advancing awareness of the need for infrastructure funding and sustainable multi-benefit infrastructure projects. Please join me in congratulating Elizabeth Bialik for her work and achievement in receiving this award. Next is the CAPIO Awards. At the 50th anniversary of the California Association of Public Information Officers Conference in late August, East Bay Mud won 2 awards for our virtual tours. East Bay Mud competed against public agencies throughout California who submitted more than 270 applications. East Bay MUD took the award for the 2020 Epic Dollar Stretcher for our suite of virtual tours, including the Arinden Water Treatment Plant, East Bay Mud Trails, the main wastewater treatment plant, and the Upcountry Fossil Discovery. This award recognizes creative marketing strategies that were completed with a limited budget. The second award was the one-time Special Event Award of Distinction for the Online Fossil Discovery Tour. This award recognizes an effort to promote an agency from a one-time event. At the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, East Bay MUD strategized how to keep customers connected to the district while many were locked down at home during the shelter in place. Our goal was to meet the public where they were, interacting online. Public Affairs researched numerous tools to create virtual tours, including video projects, social media live broadcasts, and web pages on eastbaymud.com. The best tool turned out to be the ArcGIS Story Maps, a tool we were already familiar with that was part of our Geographic Information System software. The software allowed us to seamlessly weave together current and historical photographs, maps, audio, and video, all anchored to a powerful mapping system to give our audience a big picture view, plus detailed behind-the-scenes access. The tours are featured in the Education and Trail section of East Bay MUD's website. Since the launch of the first tour, East Bay MUD story maps have been used in many communities and educational settings, and now are also available in Spanish and Chinese. They have helped East Bay MUD grow our digital reach immensely to more than 40,000 views worldwide. And for those present, congratulations, Ranger Naturalist 2, Greg Franchek, Senior Civil Engineer, Michael Hartlob, Wastewater Control Representative, Zoe Lake, Maintenance Superintendent, Ted Lamb, Senior Software Engineer, Diane Mao, Public Information Representative 3, Tracy Morales, Senior Public Information Representative, Andrea Polk, Public Information Representative 2, Nelsie Rodriguez, Graphic Designer 2, Camilo Rojas Lavado, and Manager of Water Quality, Susan Teefy. There are a few collaborators that aren't with us here today. One is Manager of Watershed and Recreation, Charles Beckman, Information Services Supervisor, Natalie Bogatyrsky, Senior Administrative Clerk, Cindy Vong, and the late Christopher Burquez, who is no longer with us, and we miss him immensely.
Let's give them a round of applause. So special. The story maps are fabulous. Thank you guys for all that you do. And this one is the Epic Award for Dollar Stretcher. How often do you get to do that? So thank you, thank you.
If I could, I'd like to say thank you to one of the rangers that led me around where the bones, the fossils were. That was one of the coolest days of my career here at East Bay MUD. Thank you.
He led my tour too. He was wonderful. Well, the team was.
All right. Do we have any other presentations? All right. There are no announcements from closed sessions, so we're on to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now, and comments on the agenda items will be heard when the item is up for discussion. Do we have anyone online for public comment?
We have one speaker online. Kelly A., is this a non-agenda or agenda item?
This is a non-agenda item.
Okay.
All right, so for online speakers, when prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we'll have you contact staff. Secretary will call each speaker in the order received. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and the secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. I also have 2 speaker cards, and maybe I'll start with those first. And for same rules apply for in-person speakers. Allotted 3 minutes to speak, and refrain from providing extraneous information. and we'll track and provide time. First speaker, Yvette Rivera. All right, next, Joey Smith.
Your 3 minutes start now.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Board, General Manager, everyone here. On a personal note, my name is Joey Smith, and I just want to remind everyone that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. As someone who is working to get our Women's Affinity group together, I just wanted to make sure that that was said out loud in this meeting. Wearing my hat as president of ASHME Local 2019, most of you see before you, and Director Coleman, it was emailed to you as well, the resolution that my members asked me to put forward. And I promised that I would. So I'm doing this now, and I'm sure everyone's been paying attention to the news, but here we go. Whereas American Federation State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 2019 Union supports the Iranian people's struggles for women's rights in Iran. Whereas the current wave of demonstrations began after Masha Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman, was brutally murdered on September 16, 2022, while in the custody of Iran's, quote, morality, end quote, police, Gasht-e-Irshad, or Guidance Patrol, because she disobeyed Iran's compulsory hijab, or dress code. Whereas Masha's name has become a rallying cry in many cities in Iran, the Iranian people are on the streets protesting for their basic human rights, which have been withheld from them for over 4 decades. Whereas the government has conducted a complete internet blackout and disrupted the services of Instagram and WhatsApp, 2 of the most popular social media services in the country, to stop people from organizing protests and limiting the information flowing in and out of Iran. The internet shutdown is the largest since November 2019, when the authorities massacred 1,500 protesters and took hundreds of people into custody. Whereas women have been burning their scarves and cutting their hair in the streets in defiance of the compulsory hijab laws. More than 180 people have been reportedly killed by Iranian security forces as of September 29, 2022. Women in Turkey, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and many other countries have demonstrated in solidarity with the Iranian protests by cutting their hair to raise their voices and praise the Iranian women's heroic uprising. Iranians all over the world have demonstrated to show their support for the men and women of Iran, to call on Iranian government to end its violent crackdown against peaceful protesters. Whereas women should not endure harassment, violence, and arbitrary arrest because of choosing what to wear. Women's choice for their covering is a basic human right. Therefore, be it resolved. ASHME Local 2019 strongly condemns the repressive measures used against the Iranian people. We also condemn the Islamic, quote, Republic of Iran for its systematic persecution and killing of women and peaceful protesters. We stand in solidarity with the women and men in Iran demonstrating for their basic human rights. Thank you for the time, and we would greatly appreciate if the district would consider joining us on this. We have been joined verbally by Local 444. We've been joined by Alameda County's Central Labor Council, working on others, and 2 public organizations have joined us in this cry as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, Joey.
Yvette Rivera.
Thank you. I provided the board a pamphlet or a booklet, and that booklet contains my recent CPRA request to get an email. I'll explain it in a second. I'll tell the details in a minute. That booklet also contains a ruling on the Shante Scott versus East Bay Mud Utility District motion to dismiss her complaint. And the last document in that booklet contains the evidence that Ms. Scott's attorneys provided the court in opposition to defendant's motion of summary judgment. Typically at this meeting, I provide a synopsis of my public comments from the morning. I spoke at the 8:30 meeting and I spoke at the 11 o'clock meeting. Given that, and I noticed that Shante Scott's case was on the agenda for closed board discussion. Given that East Bay Mud gave a public statement regarding how Ms. Scott's termination was justified and that they were confident about prevailing, it's not about if there's going to be a jury trial. Now it's going to be when. Currently, the trial date is set for November the 14th, 2022. If that changes, I will come to a board meeting and announce the change. The CPRA request that I'm asking for is the email exchange that East Bay Mud had with ABC News. The statement said, Ms. Scott's claims not only lack merit, but also omit critical facts regarding her job performance and termination. In fact, Ms. Scott contradicted many of her claims under oath in sworn testimony. We detailed the serious factual flaws in Ms. Scott's claims, complaint, and the reasons for her termination in our motion for summary judgment in response to her complaint. The result of 2 years of fact-finding and numerous sworn statements from primary parties, including Ms. Scott herself, we are confident we will prevail in this case. My CPRA request is to find out who sent that email and all of the parties that received that communication. That's all I have. I yield.
All right. Do we have speakers online? Kelly A?
Yes. Kelly A., you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you very much. East Bay Mud claims to be concerned with public outreach to cities and community agencies, community groups. And as we just heard, your public affairs staff has gotten awards, but now they have their hands full since this board has enacted a policy that has shot the district in the foot. The San Francisco Chronicle ran a pair of stories 2 weeks ago, which raked East Bay Mud over the coals. The Chronicle doesn't represent your residents. Let's be clear about that. The Chronicle doesn't represent any group within East Bay Mud. The Chronicle doesn't represent the ratepayers of East Bay Mud. Still, they are slamming your excessive use policy, and their criticisms deserve to be heard. They quote one water expert who supports your crackdown on water wasters, quote, "Sometimes shaming is your best and only option. It plays to our sense of fairness," end quote. East Bay Mud has launched one of the most aggressive and punitive conservation policies in the Bay Area. And this is all from the Chronicle stories. 3 homes in Orinda, Oakland, Richmond have been named already in the first households to be named, and they're the first households named in the entire Bay Area. 200 or 300 more households are expected to be hit with the novel charge of excessive use in late October, just a few weeks from now. While most communities across the state have fallen short of the 15% cumulative target, few suppliers in the state have put limits on individual household water use. So now East Bay Mud has teed up hundreds of households for humiliation and shame. East Bay Mud did go out and do outing of the rich and famous 7 years ago for their lack of restraint at the tap. Those included Buster Posey, Christy Yamaguchi, comedian Amy Poehler. Twitter and YouTube were scorning heavy water users who had obscenely large green lawns. I think that East Bay Mud needs to stop using its playbook, the old playbook from last decade's drought. This district is not only levying fines for violations, but You have a culture of outing and publicly shaming big users. You need to rethink your culture, rethink your policies, and pay attention, close attention to what the SF Chronicle has been saying about East Bay Mud. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, clarification on this. We only respond to freedom of information requests on information of excessive use customers in which we were required to respond to that. We don't proactively release those names. We don't put out press releases about it. It's something that we're required under state law to do. Do we have any other speakers?
We have no other speakers for public comment.
All right. Then, just a second here. We will now move to the consent calendar, items 1 through 6. Any of these items that need to be pulled from our consent calendar? If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Frank, seconded by Lisa. We need a roll call vote.
We need a roll call vote. Yep.
Have that?
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Mellon?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Lenny?
Yes. All right, we are on then to determination and discussion. Item 7.
Yes, I'm delighted to bring to you for consideration the appointment of Kathy Viatella to be our next manager of legislative affairs. Kathy has over 20 years of experience in public policy and intergovernmental affairs. She's currently the executive legislative representative for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and last year helped secure significant funding for their recycled water project. Prior to her work for Metropolitan, she was at the Resource Legacies Fund, Sustainable Conservation, the Nature Conservancy, and the Environmental Defense Fund, where she worked on water policy reforms, funding for safe drinking water, water conservation, and floodplain restoration. Kathy has a bachelor's degree from Mount Holyoke College and a master's degree from the University of Florida.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
All right. All right.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Lisa, seconded by Bill. All in favor?
Roll
Oh,
call
we have to
vote.
do a roll call vote?
Yes. Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Mellon?
I guess so, yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Lenny?
Yes. All right, carries
And-
unanimously.
And Kathy is here with us today.
Great. You get a free pass on this one. From now on, you'll be cross-examined.
So
Yes.
the mic is on. Okay, yes, I can hear myself. Well, thank you very much. I am delighted to be here today. I appreciate you approving the appointment and having confidence in me. I know coming to East Bay Municipal Utility District, I have very large shoes to fill. I have known Marlene Dumaine in my role currently with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We have worked together, and I think of us as sister agencies working together on very similar issues. I'm also really appreciative of the work that Marlene has done with her staff in the Sacramento office, and I'm really looking forward to working with them and continuing to advocate on behalf of the district. I feel the district's mission aligns with my values. When I look at sort of the 3 points in that mission, I think, looking to steward the resources, making sure that you're providing high quality and reliable water and wastewater services, and then protecting the environment for the people of California. All of those things you have done. There have been stellar work in this area. And I think I can bring to the district my experience and my background, having worked both in the water sector and with nonprofits. And I'll be able to provide articulate, thoughtful, and committed advocacy on behalf of the district, both at the state and the federal level. So again, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Next, Marlene Dumaine will provide our legislative update. This will be her last update to the board. I do want to say before she begins that we're all going to miss Marlene immensely. We've been fortunate to have her at the district for the last 16 years and in her current role for the last 4 years. I think it's safe to say that we are all happy for her retirement, if not a bit envious.
Say, Bill, weren't we going to, or Marlene, excuse me, Marguerite, weren't we going to have some rule about public affairs people retiring early? No, okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My last report, this is odd. I've gotten used to this. I'm going to miss this. But what I wanted to do today is do an end of session report for you. So give you the highlights of what happened over the last couple years in the legislature, what happened with the East Bay MUD position bills, and also a brief federal update for you. So starting with the session, so the 2021, I keep hearing a noise, I don't know what that is. 2021-22 state legislative session effectively concluded with the governor's signing deadline about 2 weeks ago on September 30th. And as usual, I want to start with some stats for you, just numbers of bills. Over the 2-year session, there were 5,129 bills introduced in the legislature. Of those, 2,311 were signed into law, and 235 were vetoed. On the vetoes, there was a very common message, particularly this last year. The theme of the most recent year was about money. And what he said in a lot of those veto messages was, with our state facing lower than expected revenues over the first few months of this fiscal year, it is important to remain disciplined. So I know this sounds like a short-term message, but this is also sort of a view into the future. His most recent couple of budget presentations, he's always said, we've got these one-time surpluses, but in the out years, we've got a deficit. So he's sort of doubling down on that, saying, here we go, we've got this structural deficit kicking in. So he's wanting to be cautious. That was the reason in a lot of those veto messages. When I looked at the number of bills compared to other governors, we always look at how does this governor compare in terms of number of bills signed into law, number of bills vetoed, number of bills that made it to his desk. It wasn't a year that stood out. It was sort of business as usual. What that said to me is, at least in terms of legislative activity level, we're moving out of this COVID situation and into a more normal course of business. And I put normal in air quotes there because we still have some COVID hangover happening in terms of how the legislature does its business. And we may see that from a policy perspective as we look at inflationary pressures, supply chain issues, et cetera, in the coming year. But at least in terms of number, we're not where we were in 2020, where there was a lot fewer bills introduced. We set some records in terms of lowest number of bills chaptered, highest number of bills, or lowest number of bills vetoed, lowest number of bills introduced. So that's kind of that crystal ball assessment. In terms of our chapter, in terms of our position bills, of those bills that we took a position on, I just did this percentage-wise just to see how this fit with overall. About 32% didn't move out of the legislature. 55% of the bills we took positions on were signed into law, and 13% were vetoed. So roughly consistent with the legislative numbers. You have a written report in front of you that details all of the bills and also some budget bills. I wanted to provide a couple of highlights for you on some high priority issues that we've been working on. The first one is broadly the rate assistance topic. And there are two components to that. One is budget related, and then one is policy related. On the budget related, over the last 2 years, there's been activity in terms of COVID relief money for water and wastewater rate assistance. The federal government, through its action, provided $116 million that went into the water equivalent of LIHEAP. We call it LIWAP, because who doesn't like a new acronym? And that money was supplemented with another 200 million at the state level. So there's about 316 million in this state LIWAC program that just got off the ground in June. And that's money that goes through a third-party administrator, just like LIHEAP does, and would pay customer arrearages to the utility. So they're sort of the middleman, so to speak, between the customer, the agency, and the state. The state also allocated $1 billion out of its COVID relief money for water and wastewater assistance that would go directly to the utilities to pay down or credit customers' accounts that had COVID-related debt. East Bay MUD benefited. We got about 13 million that we were able to credit customer accounts with that money. That money, out of the 1 billion, about 500 million was used. 200 million was used to supplement that LIWAP. And there's about 300 million sitting there that has not been allocated. They're considered restricted funds because that came out of federal COVID relief money, and it's unclear what the state intends to do with that money. On the policy side, SB 222, and that is Senator Dodd's bill to create a permanent low-income rate assistance program. That's separate from COVID relief, and it's more ongoing for low-income customers. You may recall that we engaged in 2021 on that measure. We started with the support if amended. We asked for amendments to address issues around Prop 218, and related to 218 is clarity on what the state's role would be versus what the role of the local agency would be. Those amendments were secured. We were able to go into full support in August of 2021. Fast forward to 2022, the bill was substantially amended in June, and it basically reversed those changes that we had secured. So we brought the bill to you in July. We went back into a support if amended position and worked with the author and stakeholders and legislative folks to try to reinstate the spirit of those amendments. We were not successful in getting everything that we needed. There was a lot of ambiguity between what the state would be responsible for and what the local agencies would be responsible for. We landed in a support if amended at the end of session. The measure ultimately was vetoed by the governor, and it was basically, it was a long message, and he was supporting the concept, but he was pointing to cost pressure and lack of a sustainable funding source. Any questions before I move on to the next topic?
Expect it to be back next session, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those, I think, I'm trying to remember how many times we've seen a bill on this topic area. This is either number 3 or number 4. And, you know, I view it sort of like years ago when East Bay MUD did the water supply assessment statute. That was a decade effort. It's challenging. The funding source is really a tough nut to crack on this one. So I think it's going to take repeated effort, repeated work to finally get across the finish line on this one. So yes, I think it'll be back. Next topic is water supply, water rights. There were 2 bills that we were working on this one. Unfortunately, both of them, we came at it from a negative position because both of them would have gotten to either our access to transfer water during a drought or to our basically McCollum water rights. The first bill was Assemblymember Quirk's bill, AB 2639, and that was a measure that really said, hey, State Water Board, by regulation, just move forward on the water quality control plan. And there were some issues with that. We went in with an oppose unless amended. The bill did not advance. And subsequently, our perspective, our role with regard to our negotiations with the state and the voluntary agreements and the MOU has changed. But that bill did not move. The second bill was AB 2895, and this was Assemblymember Arambula's bill. And it was intended to speed up the transfer process but the way the bill was written, it actually would have ground it to a halt. We were able to secure the amendments that we asked for, and then we're able to remove our opposition, and that bill has since been chaptered. Any questions before I move on to the next topic? I guess a final comment on the water supply, water rights. The water rights issue is going to keep coming back. The more we get into, the more the drought continues. This water rights conversation is just starting, so expect to see a lot of maybe non-strategic approaches to getting at a bigger water rights concept in the future. The next topic I wanted to cover was PFAS. And I remember when we brought the bills for position earlier this year, there was a question about, is anybody thinking strategically about this? We keep seeing bills that are very item specific. There was the bill about fire retardants a few years ago. And this year we took support positions on bills to eliminate the use of PFAS in cosmetics, textiles, cooking. Those were the sort of scatter approach bills. Then there was the bill by Assemblymember Bloom that was a little bit more strategic. It said, hey, state, why don't we do a database on where all the PFAS are coming into the state? What are the products that are coming in? And how do we then take a more thoughtful, effective approach in targeting those highest PFAS value products and going in that way? Not surprisingly, the scatter approach bills were all signed into law. The strategic approach bill was vetoed, and it was based on that cost message because of the cost that would accrue to the state. So we can expect to see more PFAS activity also in future years and other emerging contaminants. And hopefully the drive towards getting to something more strategic will ultimately be successful. But at least for the short term, we're confronted with sort of this scatter approach on that topic. The last general category I wanted to cover is budget. The budget this year, much like last year, is my time up?
No, but there is a fire.
That would scare the heck out of me if that happened.
Okay, budget.
You now have full attention.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. The last few years, and the whole budget thing has really been accelerating. It's been changing a lot in terms of, one, when the budget happens, and two, what's in the budget. We saw less on the sort of slip in policy stuff into the budget this year, but what we did see, which was consistent with the last few years, is budget season is all year instead of, a couple of discrete times of the year. And a lot of the budget actions didn't happen until the last few days of session. I remember the Sunday before session ended, checking periodically to look for when those bills are going to be in print. And it's that time of year when they put the exact time the bills come into print so they know what time they can vote on them because of that 72-hour rule. What we got towards the end were 3 budget packages in the areas that are of interest to East Bay MUD. And I will say that it was confusing how they did it because there's overlap between the packages. So you can't just add up the numbers for each package and say the total amount of money is this, because there's overlap. And they're actually still sorting through exactly where did all the money go. But broadly speaking, all of this money will go to agencies to administer. So there would be potential grant opportunities at those agencies. On the climate front, for the package, it was $39 billion over 5 years. And the categories included are drought, wildfire, energy reliability, extreme heat, health, housing, nature-based solutions, transportation, and schools. Next package is drought resilience and response, $3.6 billion over 4 years. And those categories are, where did we go here? Emergency drought response, flood and dam safety, sustainable groundwater management, water recycling and groundwater cleanup, and water conservation. The last package is wildfire and forest resilience package, $1.3 billion over 2 years. And funding categories are resilient forests and landscapes, wildfire fuel breaks, community hardening, science-based management, and forestry sector economic stimulus. So again, a lot to be determined as far as detail on that, but broadly speaking, they did put money towards categories of direct interest to East Bay MUD. Before I kind of give you an overall conclusion on the state stuff, are there any questions? Okay. What I wanted to just a preview for next year, and there'll be more about this when the legislative initiatives come to you, compliments of somebody that's not me. But I did want to share, we're going to see a big turnover in the legislature this year. There were a lot of members that announced they were not going to run next month, starting earlier in the year. So they're leaving before their term limits are up. Plus, we have term limits kicking in for some members. So we're looking at a turnover of around roughly a third of the legislature in this cycle. That's really going to change their focus. It's going to change topics. A lot of expertise is going out, is leaving. So it's just going to be different with that level of turnover.
Is that turnover weighted more in the House or the Assembly or the Senate?
Well, it's right now, it looks like we're somewhere in the vicinity of like 25 to 30 Assembly members going. The Senate number is a little harder to predict. The Senate number right now is like 10 to 15, somewhere in there. So percentage-wise, it's kind of almost comparable, probably a little bit more on the Assembly side. And part of the issue on the Assembly side is who's going to be Speaker. And we saw a little potential upset on the speakership earlier in the year. That settled. Assemblymember Rendon, Speaker Rendon is still Speaker, but there is a challenger. And I think this election and voting members there may be a change, there may not be early in the year. We just don't know. But that issue definitely affects how the House operates. Certainly over the short term. They are coming back December 5th. Everybody comes to be sworn in, all the new members, and the governor has also called a special session on what he's calling price gouging on gasoline. So it's been remarkably quiet. It was called, and there's not a lot of chatter right now. So that may ramp up when we get closer to December 5th. But that's also going to affect the pace at which they get moving on bill introductions and bill topics, et cetera, next year. And then quickly, if I can shift over to federal. Federal, there is a stopgap spending bill, and they are going to continue current year spending through December 16th. And they may do another short-term continuing resolution at that time. How long that short-term is, it really depends on the outcome of the election. So we could see something that just pushes them a little closer to the holidays in December so that they can get their spending bills done, go home, and come back for a fresh year. If there's a significant upset on the Senate side, we could see a push into next year and like March, and we've seen that happen before. So it's really uncertain what's going to happen with final spending bills right now, so stay tuned. What's associated with that is the earmark request that we have for our recycled water project. It's $4.2 million, and it's in the House spending bill. It would be very nice if that were minted into law so that we could access that request, but it's still tied with the outcome on spending and budget. Any questions? Okay, now I want to say a few words if I could. And this is sort of off the top of my head, but from my heart. It has been a privilege. And I don't want to cry, but I think I'm going to. I have worked for the district for 16 years. I've led legislative affairs for the last 11, and we've done a lot. And I have had the opportunity to look at all kinds of other utilities and get insight into how their boards operate and the personalities. And I count myself lucky every single day. This is a really special board, and if you don't know it, you should. You all bring very individual perspective and expertise. You are kind people. You deliberate, you care about the district. That reflects in your policies. You are very easy to work with. I am so proud in the legislature when I can go in and say, I represent East Bay MUD, this utility and this board. I'm going to miss you all. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity. It's been tremendous.
Oh, thank you. Marlene, it seems only fair that we get to return a little bit of that to you. I'll start out by just saying that, working with you has been a tremendous experience in understanding how the legislature works. And I know when I've called you about individual bills that I wanted you to research, I always got more information than I asked back in a very good way. I mean, I became very informed about it, and very clearly the positions that you recommend and that we ultimately take are well thought out. And there's always, a higher complexity to the bills than we imagine on face value, and you're able to explain that and help at least me understand that tremendously, and I've always appreciated that and known that we're well represented in Sacramento and well informed here in Oakland with that. So thank you very much for your service. Oh, John, there we go. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much, Doug. Marlene, it's been indeed a pleasure to work with you over the many years. A lot of what Doug said, I would say. And I appreciate the fact that when you came to us, you gave us both sides, the pros and cons. We may have been going in one direction, and you'd say, okay, that's great. Well, do it if you want. But these are some of the ramifications maybe, which is so important for us to know when we're making a policy decision or a legislative decision, to know what could happen, what we may want to do, versus vis-a-vis what can happen as a result of that. I view you as a friend. I hope I'll be able to see you at some points later on. But again, I really thank you for all your service, dedication, and being first class and top notch. Thank you.
Marguerite?
Yeah, I echo Doug and John, and I'm sure all of us, in appreciating the work that you've done on our behalf. And I guess the thing that I will point out that I really appreciate is your sort of willingness to take East Bay MUD where others fear to tread, on issues that, sometimes don't necessarily seem like they're, in the, the water sphere, but are adjacent, but then become, and PFAS being, one of those examples. And I think our willingness to engage in the low income rate assistance work as well, even though it hasn't been easy to do. And I just really appreciate your willingness to work through the really tough legislative policy discussions on our behalf. So thank you very much, and we will miss you for sure.
Bill?
I guess it's open. Marlene, You came to us at a very strategic time in the history of East Bay Mud. And I joined John in his comments. Some of us were kind of bullheaded and we attacked things straight on. You taught us tact and diplomacy. You also made the way easier getting people to join with us rather than taking polarized positions that left an opening for them to come in. And most of the things that we put forward came together. I can't thank you enough. You, along with my late wife, always kept me in check. And I think, you know, this East Bay Mud, as a family, as an organization, as a water agency, as a leader in the water industry, is indebted to you for giving us the insight and the ability to affect change on every level that we touched. I wish you well in your retirement. Go do all the things that you've been holding back on. And when you get tired, call me and I'll come and take you for some more. Thank you very much.
Andy, go ahead.
To echo my colleagues' statements, thank you so much, Marlene, for sharing your career with the district. We're so fortunate that you brought your tenacity, your skill set, your know-how to the district's mission of protecting the environment, ensuring high-quality water for ratepayers, and we are very much indebted to your work. We are very few agencies invest in an in-house lobbying program. Very few public agencies do that. I can only really think of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District as an example of one that does that. Some agencies contract out and spend a lot more money for a lot less loyalty and appreciation of what the public agency is really aiming to do. And but even beyond that value, which we certainly received with you for 11 strong years, we got more than just somebody who shares support and oppose with the legislature. We got real in the details, shaping legislation to be able to take on tough challenges and be the leader that East Bay Mud strives to be in so many cutting-edge areas. And so some of those were mentioned. I would add climate change and resilience to that, and your work before you became the leader of the program with many of our responses to the foreclosure crisis that required legislation and affordability. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best in your retirement.
Lisa, and then Frank.
Yeah, Marlene, what can I say after I echo all of the sentiments of my colleagues, and you and I had a moment to talk last Friday at Pardee, but you are a class act, and we have been so lucky to have you. Yeah, I remember when Randy Canals was leaving, and I kept going, oh my God, nobody can ever fill Randy's shoes. And here you come, and you did. And you've been absolutely excellent and a joy to work with. And I thank you for your service at the district. And don't forget, call me so we can get together.
Right.
And you did all that without a clown nose or a tutu.
All those things Randy had.
Oh, gosh. You know, the job that you filled requires a certain degree of patience because you've got 7 characters, each of whom are absolutely certain that they've got the right idea. And you did an outstanding job of not juggling those ideas, but massaging those ideas. so that they came together in a cohesive presentation. I have been incredibly impressed by that ability. It ain't easy. And as someone who has been a representative of people at bargaining and the like, especially when it's a large group, I just know how hard that is. And I've been in awe of how ably you handled it. Thank you. You made us better than we are. Oh, last wish. You know that pension thing? So I'm going to give you my standard wish. I hope you get more money out of the pension than we put in.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marlene. Okay, that puts us on to item 9.
Yes, so next is a resolution to continue to hold the meeting via teleconference under Government Code Section 54953E. Dave Briggs, Director of Operations Maintenance, has a brief COVID update prior to the board taking action on this resolution.
Do we really need an update? I'm prepared to just move the item.
It's up to the board.
No offense, Dave, but
None taken.
I move the item.
Okay.
I would second it.
All right, we have.
I'd like to hear the report.
Okay.
People that are watching-
Yeah, that's just one
seriously.
slide. I think it's useful for us to know
People
what's
that
going
watch on Zoom and other things, want to hear us decide that we're,
All right, I will note that we have.
That's fine.
We do have a motion by Director made by Director Mellon, second by Director McIntosh. And so with that, we'll have our report.
Okay, well, thank you, President Lenny. Good afternoon, members of the board. On slide 2, as we have many times, we're showing you the latest case rate in our counties. The slow decline off of the peak in the spring has continued, and in some ways you could look at this and say it's almost plateaued, somewhat hovering. Many of the metrics that we track have been relatively unchanging in the past few weeks. The positivity rate, another really important metric in Alameda County and in the state of California, has stubbornly remained at or near 5% for some time. And in between prior peaks or surges of the virus, that positivity rate has dipped below 1%. So there's still a lot of virus in the community. The levels in the wastewater streams are low, but they're persistent. Luckily, the hospitalization and mortality rates are very, very low. That's been true for all of these subvariant cases that we've seen in the past few months. So the lower data is our employee data in green. We are now up to 982. We'll probably be at 1,000 by the next board meeting. 64 of those cases are doubles. So we've had 64 cases that an employee's had it twice. 4 times an employee has gotten it 3 times. You see that the September numbers were a little lower than August. In September, we had about 1 a day, or sorry, almost 2 a day. October is closer to about 1 a day. So things are looking a little bit better in October. So some of these, slide 3, some of these changes in state law are mentioned in Marlene's memo that you have, but just to recap some of them that are COVID related. As the session ended a couple of weeks ago, new laws have extended the presumption of a workplace contraction of COVID being qualifying as a work injury. That is extended another 15 months. It was going to expire at the first of the year. It's been extended 1 more year. Notification requirements have been extended another year. Paid leave has been extended. It was to expire on September 30th, and now that's been extended to the end of the year. All of these protect employees, but they all have an administrative burden associated with them, with contact tracing, reporting, record keeping, and we've been busy with that for quite some time. On the health code regulation side, it has been very, very quiet. It's been months since California DPH has done anything. Remember that Cal OSHA at this point, thankfully, is consistently pointing to California Public Health. They're not doing something independent like they normally do as Cal OSHA. So luckily they came into alignment last year and they've remained in alignment, so it's a little bit easier to track. I imagine that Cal State Health is just waiting to see what happens this winter and see if we do see a surge, whether it's mild or not. Everything else remains in place. As I mentioned, we had 2 a day almost in September. The last week's been pretty good, about 1 a day, about a dozen or so people unable to work. These strains, these variants have been relatively mild, so no impacts on operations or any employee and serious health, having any serious health issues associated with the virus. And we always track and look forward and try to find out what's going to happen and get out in front of it. We'll continue to do that, monitoring all sorts of channels. We'll look at the indoor face covering requirement. We are one of the few agencies that have an indoor face covering requirement. We're looking at that and we'll consider lifting it maybe later this year. We have a management meeting tomorrow to discuss that in conjunction with telework. We'll continue to contact trace, that's required. And then finally, the findings in front of you on slide 6, which are consistent with the resolution also in front of you. In order for the board to meet virtually, and in this case, meeting without a physical location for the public, in order for you to keep doing this, you would have to adopt these findings in the resolution. It would needs to be a state of emergency under the California Emergency Services Act, and state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing, or as a result of the emergency, meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health or safety of meeting attendees. And with that, I will take any questions if you have any.
All right, I don't see any questions. We'll have a roll call vote then.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
No.
and President Lenny.
Yes. All right, carries on a vote of 6-1. On to the general manager report.
Yes, attached is the monthly report, and I can certainly answer any questions that you may have.
Anyone? Okay, we'll move on to reports and director comments. The committee reports, minutes from the September 27th Finance Administration Committee are included in your packet. We'll now receive a report from this morning's Legislative Human Resources Committee meeting and the October 7th Upper McCollum River Watershed Authority meeting. Director McIntosh.
The Ledge HR Committee met this morning at 8 a.m. I just had to say that, right? And we had an update on diversity and inclusion project, and that was our sole item on our agenda, and it was excellent as usual.
All right. UMRWA meeting, Director Patterson?
Yes. First, I wanted just to say how good it was to be back in person at an UMRWA meeting. And John, for the record, all of them sent you a message of support, knowing that you were going through some things, and they were all with you in heart. I wanted you to know that. One of the greatest things that, for me, to experience with UMRWA, and I say that, is that the authority has come a long, long way. And it seemed to be on board and together. Not only did they have the normal meeting with the Treasurer's report, but Patrick Wright came forth with a report that I think this board should be aware of. It has to do with getting the agencies, all at different levels, working more closely together and not separated, not having a local agency, a regional agency, a in-between agency, a city or a county, and the different regulations and things trying to run all at one time. and they're talking about centralizing and putting it all in one package so that it can go forth without barricades at different, 3 reports on the same subject, having to have all those done and in place. And John, for your information, just to know, because I know you've been very close to this, the whole UMRWA representation are bought into that and are supporting it and hoping that it goes forward. The major thing that came out of this was we spend a lot of money on fires, emergency response money, but there's very little money for prevention. And they want to shift the focus from spending emergency money to the preventive end, to which UMRWA has been very involved, and that we can be thankful in our watershed that great work is going on in this respect. I think that's really the upshot of all of the legislation and things that they're supporting are moving forward, and the agency reports that back. Everybody's in the process of getting the budget together. That's always a little hurdle, but we'll get there. That's my report in terms of UMRWA. I'll have, if I can, take a moment after you finish this and receive the report, one other item that I'd like to call to the board's attention.
All right, Bill. Well, we're on to director comments.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was thrilled and appreciative of the fact that the State of Black Education in Oakland did their Black Excellence Awards. And my touching education and being a part of it goes back. A lot of things brought memories that I had forgotten. But they gave me an award at this program. It was called the Wise Elder Award in Black Education. And I was very thankful because they remembered how I partnered with education in my history to make great people come forth from our youth. And basically, I wanted to share that with the board and say, I was just moved. Thank you for supporting me, board. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for all your service, and we always appreciate hearing some history and some perspective from you. Thank you so much. Other board comments?
We attended Party Barbecue last Friday, and it was an excellent event. It had been a long time since I know I had been up there, apparently a lot of people. So it was absolutely wonderful, and it was a great turnout, a beautiful day. And our upcountry partners were there, along with Garamendi and others. So kudos to everyone who was responsible.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Couple things. Last week, in addition to Party Barbecue, I participated in a community meeting for the Sobrante Water Treatment Plant, which, I mean, I attend plenty of meetings in my ward, but this one was actually organized by one of the people that went through the Community Water Academy and really challenged us actually to go beyond the way that we ordinarily do community outreach and volunteered to get the word out to more than 800 people that she regularly works with. And we had it had an amazing turnout. It was, I would say, a little bit more of a rambunctious meeting than than most of the ones that we have. But I think it's a lesson learned, and I know we've been piggybacking on, existing community meetings where there's a organic turnout that already exists of people that are interested, either because they're part of the community or because it's an area of interest. And I just think as we look at more, the need to do more community outreach is really front loading some time, researching and understanding what those organic community-led associations and networks are, and tapping into them will serve us well in getting the word out about our projects and into listening to the authentic concerns of the community in those. So that was, I know, a challenging meeting for some of our staff to figure out, but I'm really glad that it happened. And then a preview tomorrow. I'm going to be participating in a hike with Assemblymember Bauer Cahan up in our watershed through the Siesta Valley, and looking forward to that.
Great. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doug. First, Bill, thank you very much for relaying the comments regarding the party barbecue and the UMRWA meeting. I'm glad it went so well. And just to tee off of that, you have been an integral part of this as well for years. And I really think it's been the effort of many agencies that have allowed UMRWA to go to where they are today and where they're going to go tomorrow into the future. So thank you on that behalf. Sorry that I missed the meeting, but as many of you were, my wife had surgery last week, so I've been taking care of her, and I'm not going to be able to make the tour meeting on the 18th because I have a work commitment that's a workshop that's been on my books for about 5 months now for the 18th of next week. So thank you.
All right. Other director comments? I'll just say I had the opportunity to be part of the public meeting on the Oakland Inner Harbor project that was held last week, and want to thank the staff for great presentations, great answers to community questions. And looks good for that project, unlike Marguerite's workshop or meeting.
Ours is going to be fine.
Yeah.
We got to hear what people really thought, which
well,
I think in our meetings that we sponsor, we don't
that's what we're looking
necessarily
for.
Hear it.
Right, great. All right, with that then, we will be adjourned. The next regular meeting of the board will be held Tuesday, October 25th at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now officially adjourned.